you, Chairman. First of all, Chairman, I really want to thank you and members of the committee for coming down to Southwest Florida for this hearing. The devastation that occurred here in Southwest Florida a year ago was breathtaking. And we've been through hurricanes before here. It's something that the rebuilding effort is not something that's far from the minds of people from this part of the state of Florida, or even from Florida in general. But the level of devastation from flooding in particular is something that none of us really could understand the magnitude of. Those early days post-storm were rough, but what we saw firsthand were a lot of agencies, federal and state and local, try to come together to get this area back on track. Some miraculous things occurred through that. But the one thing that's was always clear about the people of Southwest Florida was their resiliency. Chairman, I can tell you we had residents on Fort Myers Beach who hunkered down through this storm, which was shocking to me, but they did and did not bat an eye. When some of them when they were asked to leave their residences, their refrain to me and to a lot of local leaders was, absolutely not. This is my home, and this storm has passed, and we're going to do everything we can to rebuild. To the people of Sanibel Island, who literally saw their entire causeway destroyed right in front of their eyes, instead of, obviously there was a lot of desperation at the time, but they had a major can-do spirit, and they were on boats going back and forth to Sanibel Island trying to clear debris from their homes, trying to start that process of building back. People on Pine Island, as the Matt Lachey Bridge was washed out, they were on the phone with me 2 days after, basically saying, Byron, we're going to rebuild that bridge with the government or without the government. That thing's being rebuilt. That's a little bit of the mindset and the heart that has gone on here in Southwest Florida post-storm. My actions in particular, my offices, legislative activities basically ceased. They ended. And at that point, everything was about trying to make sure that all of our offices, whether it was here locally in the district office or the DC office, were available to provide any service, any resource, act as a hub for our constituents, those in need. We toured many areas of the district, from doing aerials over Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach, and Matt Lachey. It was even being on the ground, right here locally in the Harlem Heights section of Southwest Florida, right off of San Carlos Boulevard, trying to assess the damage of those on the barrier islands, those who were on the mainland, so to speak, but right off of the low-lying areas, right in those low-lying areas, to assess their issues and what was going on there. The devastating impacts to the Southwest Florida community were immense. I mean, we saw the pictures all over the news and all over social media of massive, boats in roadways, and you would see cars in mangroves, and et cetera. We still have some of that stuff is still there, present to this day. There were organizations from all around the country that made their way to the district, strangers, nonprofits. People would bring food, people would bring supplies, all that they could do to try to help our area recover. You had nonprofit groups, churches coming together to strip drywall, to scoop out mud, to get carpeting out, and a lot of the mobile home parks in our area, you had nonprofit groups come in to try to help people who this was their retirement, this was their home, and as they were watching the particle board floors evaporate from a combination of water damage and heat, trying to help them find a new place to go to. We've had groups come in to assist with laundry services, etc. Simply put, the recovery efforts were massive, but they're still not done. And there's still, although we've made a lot of progress in a lot of areas of Southwest Florida, there's still much to be done. I really want to thank the chairman for scheduling this hearing today to discuss with government officials from FEMA, from SBA, and from HUD which are the three main federal agencies that oversaw Hurricane Ian response from a federal level. I look forward to this hearing as we take an overall view of the efficiency and the effectiveness of the federal government's Hurricane Ian response. And I look forward to having a blunt and open conversation today with which will ultimately improve disaster relief efforts in the future. And the one thing, Chairman, I will say is that, like I said, in Southwest Florida, we're accustomed to these events. They do happen periodically. And the number one thing we want to make sure that we accomplish is that coordination between federal and state gets better, that the triage, the assessments, and the delivery of resources to our citizens gets better as time goes on. But I'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the fact that there were and are some gaps that do need to be addressed, and I think that's really the purpose of this hearing. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield back to you, but there's a couple of things I do want to enter into the record, if I may.
Without objection, gentlemen will make those.
First is testimony from the City of Fort Myers Beach, outlining the proposed action plan to improve federal disaster relief. The second is testimony from the City of Cape Coral expressing their perspective on the federal government's hurricane release efforts. Number three is testimony from a married couple from Fort Myers Beach expressing their take on the federal government's Hurricane Ian response. Fourth, testimony from Randy Denzer, who was a volunteer from Texas who traveled to Southwest Florida to assist with Hurricane Ian response. Fifth is an article titled "Man Refuses to Get Off His Fort Myers Beach Roof, Protesting FEMA Regulations." That was a Wink News article. Sixth is an op-ed that I published titled "Lessons Learned from Hurricane Ian, Let's Embrace Nuclear." 7, a letter from Southwest Florida's only short-line railroad, Seminole Gulf Railway, relating to Hurricane Ian recovery efforts. And 8, a letter that I sent today to the U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy requesting that the United States Postal Service extend its mail forwarding deadline by another 6 months to assist my constituents that are still rebuilding their homes and recovering from Hurricane Ian. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.